The moment I realized that I had made the wrong decision, I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. I had put my career above everything, above the person I loved, above the life we had shared, above the future we could have built together. And now, with each passing day, I could see the consequences of my actions. It wasn't just the loneliness, or the longing to be with Lily again. It was the realization that I had chosen something temporary over something real, something lasting. One night, as I was pacing my apartment, I came to a decision. I had been running from this truth for too long, afraid to face it, afraid of the mess I had created. But I couldn't keep pretending. The job wasn't enough. No promotion, no salary increase, no fancy title would ever compare to what I had with Lily. She was the one thing in my life that made sense. And I wasn't about to let that slip away just because I was too proud to admit that I had been wrong. The next morning, I called her. I had no script, no carefully planned speech, just the raw truth that had been weighing on me for so long. "Lily," I said, my voice shaking. "I've made a mistake. I've been running from something that I should have fought for. And I don't want to keep running anymore." She was quiet on the other end, and for a moment, I thought she might hang up. But then she spoke softly, as if she had been waiting for me to say those words for a long time. "I don't know if I can just forget everything, Jack," she said. "But if you're really serious about this, we can figure it out. But you have to know that I can't wait forever." In that moment, I knew that everything had changed. The decision I had made to leave her had been the hardest one I had ever made, but this decision, to fight for us, to choose her above everything else, was the one that would define the rest of my life. I packed my things that day, made plans to return home, and knew that the hardest part was still ahead, the long road of rebuilding what I had broken. But this time, I wasn't running away. I was running toward her, toward the life we had always dreamed of, and toward the future that still held hope. The decision that changed everything wasn't about the job, or the status, or the career. It was about realizing that the true measure of success was in the people you love, the relationships you build, and the courage to make things right. And I was finally ready to do just that. The reality of my decision hit me harder than I expected. I thought that when I left for the new job, I'd feel a sense of excitement, of pride in accomplishing something I had worked so hard for. But instead, as I boarded that plane, all I could think about was Lily. All the promises I had made to her, all the moments we had shared, now felt like distant memories. The idea of living a life of constant travel, working long hours in a foreign city, suddenly felt hollow. I spent my first week in the new city trying to settle into my new role, trying to convince myself that this was the right choice. But no matter how many new restaurants I visited, how many meetings I attended, or how many successes I had at work, nothing seemed to fill the void I felt inside. It was like I had been running on empty, using work as a distraction from the fact that I was missing something, someone, so important. I kept telling myself that this job would bring everything into place. I had told myself that it was just a matter of time before I could bring Lily over, after I'd made enough money, after I'd earned enough stability. But as the weeks dragged on, I realized that my decision hadn't just pulled me away from her physically. It had done something even worse. It had created an emotional distance. And once that distance started growing, it was impossible to ignore. I would call Lily, of course, but the conversations became strained. She would talk about her life back home, about the things I was missing, family events, friends getting together. But the more we talked, the more I felt like an outsider in my own life. The hardest part was realizing that I wasn't just missing her. I was missing the life we could have had. The plans we had made together, the simple joys of living side by side. I had convinced myself that my job was my path to happiness, but the truth was, my happiness had always been tied to her. And here I was, stuck in a city far away from everything that truly mattered. The lonelier I became, the more I started to second-guess everything. Was this job really worth it? Was it worth giving up the life we could have had together? No amount of success or accolades could fill the emptiness I felt. In my pursuit of something better, I had abandoned what was truly important, her. That's when it hit me. I had made a decision out of fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of losing out on opportunities, fear of missing out on life's big moments. But in the process, I had lost sight of what truly mattered: love, connection, and the person who had been there for me when no one else was. And now, as I sat in my lonely apartment thousands of miles away, I knew that this decision had cost me more than I could ever imagine. For months, I had convinced myself that my decision to take that job abroad was the right one, that it would give me everything I ever wanted. The salary was incredible, the opportunities were endless, and the idea of traveling to new places, experiencing new cultures, it all sounded like the perfect escape. I was finally going to get what I had worked so hard for: status, success, and the kind of life that I thought would make me feel fulfilled. But what I didn't realize at the time was that this job, this big, shiny opportunity, was also the thing that would drive a wedge between me and everything that truly mattered. When I received the offer, I was on top of the world. It seemed like everything I had been striving for was within reach. But as the excitement of the offer faded, a new reality began to sink in. This wasn't just an opportunity for a career shift. It was going to be a complete lifestyle change, one that would pull me away from everything I had built back home. The constant travel would mean being away from family, from friends, from Lily. The late nights in foreign cities would rob me of any real connection with the people I loved. I tried to ignore that nagging feeling in my chest, telling myself that this was the way forward, that I needed to make sacrifices now for a better future. After all, I was doing this for both of us, right? But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. The truth was that no amount of money or career success could ever replace the warmth of Lily's smile, the sound of her laugh, the comfort of having someone by your side who truly understood you. I had convinced myself that the job was everything, that it would give me the status and the life I thought I needed, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized something: it wasn't enough. Not by a long shot. I had always believed that success in life came from achievements, from career milestones, from the things you could put on paper to show the world that you had made it. But now I understood that the real measure of success wasn't about what you had, it was about who you had beside you. I had chased after a dream, a job that seemed perfect on paper, but it was slowly taking me farther away from the very thing that made life worth living: love. In the weeks leading up to my departure, I found myself dreading the thought of leaving. Not because of the job itself. No, that was the easy part. I dreaded leaving Lily. And that's when I realized the hardest truth of all. I had made a decision to chase something that wasn't truly fulfilling, something that would cost me more than I was willing to lose. It wasn't until a year had passed, and I found myself in another city, on another business trip, that I had a real epiphany. I was sitting in a hotel room, staring at the walls, and it hit me. I hadn't been protecting Lily when I broke up with her. I hadn't been protecting us. I had been running from vulnerability. Running from the fear that things might not work out, running from the idea of opening up to someone completely. I had thought that love was something that would be easy, something that would fall into place as long as I did everything right. But the truth was, love is never convenient. It's messy, unpredictable, and at times, downright painful. But that doesn't mean it isn't worth it. I thought about Lily, about the way we would laugh together, the way she always knew how to make me feel at home, no matter where I was. I thought about the little things that made our relationship so special, and it struck me how much I had taken it all for granted. I wasn't just missing her, I was missing the part of myself that only she made me feel. The part of me that wasn't hiding behind my career or my fears. One afternoon, after another lonely meeting across the world, I found myself back in town for a brief visit. It was for work, but my mind kept drifting back to Lily. I couldn't help myself. I wondered where she was, what she was doing, and, most of all, if she was happy. Was she still single? Had she moved on? I walked into a cafe one afternoon, a habit I had before I left for the job overseas, and there she was. Lily. She was sitting at a table by the window, reading a book. She looked exactly the same. But as I stood there, watching her, I felt the same spark I had felt all those years ago. She looked up, and for a brief moment, our eyes met. The air between us felt charged, full of unspoken words. The years had passed, but the connection between us was still there. I knew in that moment that I couldn't just let her walk out of my life for good. It was hard at first, to look her in the eye after everything I had done. For months, I had built walls around myself, telling myself that what I did was necessary. I had convinced myself that I was doing the right thing by letting her go, protecting her from the uncertainty that my career would bring. But deep down, I knew I hadn't been protecting her. I had been protecting myself. Protecting myself from the fear of being vulnerable. Now, as I sat across from Lily again, I had to confront the truth. The truth that I had run from the very thing that made love real, the vulnerability that comes with truly letting someone into your life. Love isn't easy. It's not always perfect. But it's real when you allow yourself to be open. To be seen for who you really are, flaws and all. I realized that the reason I had left her wasn't because I didn't love her. It was because I was afraid of how much I loved her. Loving her meant facing all my insecurities, facing the parts of myself I'd hidden away, and being honest about my fears. It meant being willing to risk everything I had built in my life for something as unpredictable as love. And that scared me. But here I was, facing the woman I had loved and lost, and I knew that if there was any chance of rebuilding what we once had, it had to start with vulnerability. I had to let her see who I truly was, someone who wasn't perfect, someone who made mistakes, but someone who was willing to do the hard work to be better for her. For us. There were nights when I would lie awake, thinking about how to approach the conversation. What could I say that would make her understand? How could I explain that it wasn't her, but my own fears that had driven me to walk away? But I had no choice. I couldn't just expect things to magically fall into place. I had to be honest with her, completely, and without holding anything back. In the days that followed our reunion, I started to feel that familiar connection with her again. But this time, there was no rushing. No pretending everything was fine. I had to be vulnerable. I had to share my deepest regrets and admit that I wasn't just protecting her by breaking up with her. I was running away from the unknowns of love. Running away from the responsibility of truly committing to her. Slowly, as we spent time together, I opened up more. I told her about my struggles with vulnerability, how difficult it was for me to believe that love was something I could hold on to. I told her about the constant fear that if I let her in completely, I would lose control of everything I had worked so hard to build. And as I said those words out loud, it hit me: love is not about control. It's about trust. It's about showing up for each other, even when you don't have all the answers. As I shared these truths with her, I began to see a shift in her, too. She wasn't the same woman I had left behind. She was stronger. More confident. She had moved on in ways I hadn't expected. But there was still something between us, something we couldn't deny. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that glimmer of hope, the belief that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild what we had lost. But this time, I knew we would rebuild it on a foundation of vulnerability, honesty, and trust. The hardest part of all of this was the conversation. The words I had avoided for so long were now the very thing that stood between us and a chance at rebuilding our future. I had spent a year justifying my actions, convincing myself that I had done the right thing by walking away. But now, sitting face to face with Lily, I couldn't hide from the truth any longer. I invited her to meet me one afternoon. I wanted to do this right, to explain everything without rushing, to give her the space to hear me out. But I didn't know where to start. What could I possibly say to make up for the pain I had caused her? How could I possibly make her understand the depth of my regret when she walked into the cafe? I almost felt like I was seeing her for the first time all over again. There was that same warmth in her smile, that same spark in her eyes. But there was also something else. A caution. A distance. And I knew it was my fault. "Lily," I began, my voice shaky at first. I owe you an apology. A real one. Not just the kind of apology you give when you don't know how to fix things, but the kind that comes with real understanding. She nodded quietly. waiting for me to continue. The silence between us felt heavy, like all the years of unanswered questions were weighing on us both. "I've been thinking a lot about why I left," I said, looking down at my hands. "And for so long, I thought I was doing it for you. That I was protecting you from a life of uncertainty. From a life where I couldn't be the partner you needed me to be. But the truth is, I wasn't protecting you. I was protecting myself. I was afraid. Afraid of love. Afraid of what it meant to let someone in completely. And I made the biggest mistake of my life by walking away from you." She didn't interrupt. She just listened. But her eyes told me everything. She was hurt. She was confused. She wanted to believe me, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. And that hurt more than anything. "I should have never left you," I continued, my voice breaking slightly. "You didn't deserve that. You deserved someone who was ready to love you fully, someone who wasn't afraid to face the unknown with you. I was wrong to let you go. And I'm sorry." There was a long pause as Lily took in everything I said. I could see her processing, her mind racing, trying to piece together the story of the past year. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But I do appreciate that you're being honest with me. I don't know what comes next, Jack. But I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to see if we can find a way forward together." Her words were cautious, but they were more than I had hoped for. In that moment, I knew that I had taken the first step in the hardest journey of all. The journey of rebuilding not just our relationship, but the trust that had been broken. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be quick. But it was real. And for the first time, I understood that true love wasn't about avoiding the hard conversations. It was about having them, even when they scared you to death. We didn't have all the answers in that moment. But I knew we were on the path to something better. Something real. And no matter what happened, I was ready to face it, with her by my side. Because, in the end, love isn't about waiting for things to be perfect. It's about choosing to be honest, choosing to face the hard truths, and choosing to move forward together. As the months passed, I noticed something that I hadn't truly understood before. Love isn't just a feeling, it's an action. It's not just the flutter of excitement in your chest when you see someone you love, it's in the small things, the daily acts of choosing each other. There were mornings when I would wake up and find myself lying next to Lily, feeling the warmth of her presence, and I would realize how much I had missed this simple connection, the quiet mornings, the shared looks, the unspoken understanding between us. At first, I was afraid that we wouldn't be able to rebuild what we had lost. I had hurt her deeply, and I had walked away from her, which had broken her trust. But as we spent more time together, I began to realize that love doesn't require perfection. It just requires a willingness to try, to show up, to make it work despite all the imperfections. I understood that love, at its core, is about accepting the messiness of life and choosing to be there for each other, even when things aren't easy. It's about being vulnerable enough to admit your mistakes, to own up to your fears, and to grow together, even when it's hard. Every day with Lily was a reminder that love isn't about waiting for the perfect moment. It's about making the most of the moments you have, learning to be present and giving all that you can in those moments. Love became less about waiting for something magical to happen and more about recognizing that magic already existed in the everyday things we shared, the late-night talks, the support in tough times, the joy in the simple moments. And perhaps the most powerful realization was that love, when you choose it every day, has the ability to heal. When I had left Lily, I thought I was protecting her from heartache. But now I knew that it wasn't the absence of heartache that mattered, it was the willingness to face it together. With every new conversation, every new moment we shared, we rebuilt something stronger. Our bond was no longer based on the illusion of perfection, but on the real, raw love that comes from understanding each other deeply, flaws and all. This was when I understood that love isn't about avoiding the difficult times. In fact, the difficult times are when love has the most power. When you face struggles together and choose to be by each other's side despite the challenges, that's when love grows deeper. And through our healing, I learned that the real power of love lies not in avoiding pain or mistakes, but in embracing them as part of the journey. Love is stronger because of the lessons learned from past wounds and stronger for the courage to face the unknown together. Looking back, I realize how much I had underestimated the importance of vulnerability in love. I spent so much time trying to protect myself from the possibility of hurt that I almost missed out on the joy of truly living, truly loving someone. Love isn't about having it all figured out or waiting for the perfect circumstances. It's about the willingness to take a chance, to open yourself up to another person, and to commit to showing up every single day. In the past, I believed love was something that happened when everything was in perfect alignment. I thought it was all about timing, having the right career, the right moment in life. But now I know that love isn't about having everything perfectly arranged. It's about choosing to love, even when it doesn't fit into your neat, pre-planned idea of what your life should look like. It's about deciding to love, even when it means stepping into the unknown. What I've learned through all of this is that love is a choice. A choice that needs to be made every day. It's easy to love when everything is going well, but true love is tested in the hard times, when the future feels uncertain, when fears threaten to pull you away from what matters most. But the beauty of love is that, with the right person, it's worth fighting for. It's worth choosing, even when it's messy, even when it's hard, and especially when it scares you. For so long, I tried to hide from love, thinking I was doing the right thing. But now I see that the right thing isn't about avoiding pain or uncertainty. It's about embracing the vulnerability of loving another person, knowing that it comes with both the highs and the lows. But in those moments of vulnerability, something incredible happens. You find strength. Strength in the moments of doubt, strength in the moments when you question whether you're making the right choice, and strength in the moments when you decide to love despite everything. Now, as I look ahead, I know that life will continue to throw its challenges our way. We will have our ups and downs, just like every other couple. But I also know that love is a choice I will make every day. I will choose to love Lily, even when it's not easy, even when we don't have everything figured out. Because love is about showing up for each other in the good times and the bad. It's about facing the future with someone you trust and being brave enough to say, I choose you. And every day, I choose her. Love isn't about waiting for the perfect time, the perfect conditions, or the perfect version of yourself. It's about the courage to choose each other, over and over again. And when you do that, you find something that's worth more than anything else, a connection that goes beyond timing, beyond circumstances, and beyond fear. This is what I've learned. Love isn't something you find. It's something you create, and it starts with choosing it every day, no matter what. I didn't have to be perfect to deserve love. I just had to be willing to show up and be vulnerable, and in that, I found the courage to give everything I had to the woman I loved. And with her by my side, I know I'll continue to choose love every single day.